So for years now, we've all been wondering, is Swift finally going to get replaced? And honestly, Ripple's always been at the top of everyone's list as the most likely candidate to do it. I mean, just look at what's been happening in finance these past couple of years. Everything's changing, right? We're literally watching this massive shift from all those old paper-based systems to these new digital processes that are way faster and more efficient. Here's the thing, though. When you really dig into the technology that's making all this possible, Swift just doesn't have it. They're still stuck in the old way of doing things. But then you've got players like Ripple who are absolutely crushing it in this new tech space, along with XRP and the XRPL doing some pretty incredible stuff. So in this video, I want to break down exactly how I think Ripple is going to end up replacing Swift. But here's where it gets interesting. I don't think it's going to happen the way most people expect it to, and I'll explain why. Let's talk about why Swift is even in our crosshairs here. This thing's been around since 1973. We're talking about a 50-year-old system. And yeah, it's massive. Over 11,500 banks and financial institutions plugged into it across 200 countries. Pretty impressive reach. But here's where things get messy. Swift has this huge problem. It's basically controlled by the US, and we've turned it into this financial weapon. Seriously, we've used it to sanction countries left and right. We've weaponized a network that connects over 11,000 banks around the world. And you know what? A ton of countries are absolutely fed up with this. They're sick of having to play by US rules just to move money around the globe. Take Russia, for example. Remember back in March 2022, when we hit them with those sanctions? We basically kicked them off Swift and weaponized the dollar at the same time. That's exactly why you're seeing all these nations scrambling to find alternatives to both Swift and the dollar. And honestly, a lot of them are making real progress, which is definitely eating into Swift's dominance. Now, does this mean Swift is about to collapse tomorrow? Nah, we're not there yet. But here's where I think these new technologies are going to absolutely flip the script on Swift's dominance. The thing is, what if there's a totally different game plan happening behind the scenes? Something most people aren't picking up on yet. Because if you're betting on Ripple just straight up replacing Swift and XRP becoming this massive global bridge currency, you really need to pay attention to what I'm about to show you. Let's dive into some of these recent moves Ripple's been making. Remember Hidden Road? That acquisition was absolutely massive. We covered it a bunch of times because the implications are insane. These guys want to push $3 trillion per year through the XRP ledger. And they've got over 300 major financial institutions already plugged in. That's not small potatoes. But it's not just Hidden Road. They also just scooped up Rail. And here's the thing. These two acquisitions work together perfectly. What we're actually watching happen here is Ripple building this massive institutional infrastructure stack, but it's all focused on blockchain and tokenized assets. They're not just trying to compete with Swift. They're building something completely different. And this is just the beginning. It's only going to get bigger from here. Think about it. Swift had this 50-year head start, right? Since 1973, they've been the name everyone thinks of when it comes to moving money around the world. They've owned that space completely. But that's all changing now. When you step back and look at everything Ripple's been doing, not just recently, but over the past 13 years, it's pretty clear they've been building toward this moment. All those moves, all that groundwork, it's brought us to this point where Ripple isn't just some player in the crypto space anymore. They're becoming a serious force in the entire financial system. And here's why the Rail acquisition is such a big deal. It comes down to one crazy stat. They power over 10% of all business-to-business stablecoin volume. Just let that sink in for a second. We're talking about 10% of the entire B2B stablecoin market flowing through their infrastructure. When you really think about it, stablecoins are absolutely taking over the crypto world. We're already at over 1% of the global M2 money supply. That's massive. And I just did a deep dive on where this could go by 2030. And the numbers are mind-blowing. We're talking about exponential growth here. Honestly, I think stablecoins are going to completely dominate the global M2 supply eventually. We're probably looking at 10% plus in the not too distant future. And who knows, maybe even 100% down the road. Everything's moving on chain. Everything's getting tokenized. And this trend isn't just continuing, it's actually speeding up like crazy. So when you look at Rail controlling 10% of B2B stablecoin volume, and then you see where stablecoins are headed in terms of global money supply, the picture becomes pretty clear. And here's what's interesting. A lot of people are calling the Rail acquisition Ripple's big warning shot to Swift. Like, they're basically saying, hey, Swift, we're coming for you. Perfect example. Paul Barron nailed it when he posted about this being Swift's wake-up call. He broke down exactly why this $200 million Rail acquisition is such a game changer. And it's not just because Ripple's throwing around big money. Look at what Rail actually brings to the table. They're processing 10% of that massive $36 billion global B2B stablecoin market. That's huge. But here's where it gets really interesting. They're turning those painful days-long wire transfers into settlements that happen in just hours. And Paul called out this stablecoin sandwich tech, basically this seamless bridge between old-school fiat and digital money, plus all the virtual accounts and automated back-office stuff that businesses actually need. But the real kicker is what this means for businesses day to day. We're talking about cross-border payments that settle in minutes instead of days. Costs slashed by 80% compared to traditional banking. That's not a small improvement, that's revolutionary. Plus, you get 24/7 settlement, so no more sitting around waiting for banks to open on Monday morning. And they're doing all this while staying fully compliant with regulations, which is exactly what big institutions need to hear. So now Ripple's got the infrastructure to actually go head-to-head with Swift in that massive $3 trillion cross-border payments market. And here's what's crazy. Every single move Ripple's been making is part of this bigger strategy. It's all about building out this internet of value they keep talking about. But here's the million-dollar question. Is Swift going to be part of this new world, or are they going to get left behind? Because while everyone's saying, oh, look, Ripple's just trying to destroy Swift with these acquisitions, there's something really interesting happening here. Check this out. FEETX0 pointed out something key about the Rail acquisition. This thing actually supports SEPA, Fedwire, ACH, and Swift payment rails, plus a bunch of others. So it's not like they're shutting Swift out completely. They're actually plugging into multiple networks. And this is where people need to remember something I've been saying forever about Swift. They don't actually clear and settle payments. Swift is basically just a messaging system. All those other players connected to Swift are the ones doing the actual heavy lifting with clearing and settlement, which is exactly why everything takes forever. So maybe this isn't about replacing Swift entirely. Maybe it's about something totally different. When people say Ripple's going to replace Swift, I think they're missing the bigger picture here. We're already doing everything that Swift doesn't do anyway. So here's a wild thought. What if Swift actually wants to stick around and stay relevant? They should probably jump on board with what Ripple's building. I'm talking about Swift actually adopting digital assets and distributed ledger technology into their infrastructure, especially for settlement. Even if they want to keep handling the messaging side, fine, whatever. But settlement, that's where they desperately need to modernize. And here's the cool part. With ISO 20022 rolling out, a lot of those old messaging problems are getting solved anyway. This standard actually makes it way easier for DLT, blockchain, and digital assets to plug right in. So you could literally have Swift handling messaging while using the XRP ledger for settlement. They could work together. Casey Craddock from Ripple actually touched on this perfectly. Someone asked if Ripple's ready to compete with Swift, and his response was brilliant. He said there's totally a world where both companies coexist. His point was that customers just want to send money instantly and cheaply around the world. They want a better experience, period. Pay attention to what he's really saying here.
Let's look at Ripple. Now, where is it as it stands today in terms of, say, cross-border transactions? Is it ready to compete with, say, Swift?
Well, like you mentioned, we started out trying to solve the multi-trillion-dollar cross-border payment challenge, and blockchain technology really solves that pain point. And we've been doing this now for over a decade and have processed over $70 billion and can pay out comfortably to 90 markets around the world, which is very different to some of our competitors in the market. And this really gives us this opportunity to leapfrog. Now, your direct question around Swift, I think there's a world where we both coexist. Our customers really just want to be able to send money instantly. cost effectively around the globe, and whether or not that's using blockchain technology or other tools, really we just need to be able to enable a better customer experience. And what we've seen from an industry perspective is this heightened interest in stablecoins, because stablecoins really do solve that problem. And the nature of blockchain technology is it's truly global, and that's really kind of the benefit from a customer experience perspective. Now, more broadly speaking, solving the cross-border payment challenge has enabled us to build digital asset infrastructure that we're now banks and financial institutions such as SocGen Forge, BBVA are leveraging that technology really to build their own business. And continued evolution of regulation will only further that business model for us.
Exactly. And this is what people keep getting wrong about Ripple's whole strategy. Their main focus was never about taking down Swift. They genuinely don't care about Swift that much. What they care about is solving this massive problem. How do we actually make moving money around the world better, faster, cheaper? That's been their mission from day one. Swift was never the target. Inefficient cross-border payments were the target. If Swift doesn't want to embrace this new technology, well, they'll basically replace themselves. It's that simple. And you know what? There absolutely is a world where Ripple and Swift work together. David Schwartz has been saying this for years. I honestly think that's exactly how this is going to play out. And I'm pretty sure Swift knows it too. Here's the key thing everyone needs to watch. ISO 20022. November of this year is basically the deadline, and we've been tracking this closely. What ISO 20022 does is create this framework that lets all this new technology plug right in seamlessly. And check this out. Rachel Levy, who's the global head of innovation engineering at Swift, actually said something really telling about how new forms of value transfer such as tokenization and digital assets are coming to the fore. And she's absolutely right. That common ISO 20022 standard is going to be crucial to prevent everything from getting totally fragmented. This is literally the key that's going to unlock massive adoption for digital assets and the whole crypto space. Now, here's where people get confused, and I want to clear this up. Most cryptocurrencies, they're not ISO 20022 compliant. In fact, almost none of them are. Even XRP, and this trips people up all the time, XRP itself isn't ISO 20022 compliant. It's actually Ripple, the company that's ISO 20022 compliant. That compliance is what allows XRP to work within Ripple's ecosystem, which is a massive advantage for them. But let's be clear, no cryptocurrency by itself is ISO 20022 compliant. But here's the beautiful part. ISO 20022 is the standard that actually creates the bridge for all these digital currencies and distributed ledgers to plug into the new financial world. It's like building the universal adapter that lets everything connect. And the really exciting part, this standard basically mandates that big banks have to integrate with these new technology forms. It's not optional anymore. They have to do it. So we're looking at this massive acceleration in adoption of DLT, blockchain, and tokenized assets across the entire banking system. What blows my mind about all this is when you look back to late 2023, there was this Converge podcast called New Rails to New Worlds, building inclusive, innovative infrastructures for global payments. Get this, they had Ripple's head of payment products sitting right there with Citi's head of digital assets and Swift's global head of payments and PMI. Then Swift drops this post at the start of this year saying digital assets could totally revolutionize how we trade securities, creating all these new innovative ways to do things. But here's the thing, they're honest about the current mess. The tokenization world is all over the place, fragmented as hell, and we're nowhere near the scalability or adoption we need. That's where their 5 key fixes come in for building solid digital asset ecosystems. Interoperability is huge. And honestly, we're already making progress there. Data fragmentation is another big one, but ISO 20022 is tackling that head on. The real kicker? Swift wouldn't be diving this deep unless they're serious about innovation. They're clearly ready to jump into digital assets and tokenization in a big way. That's exactly why I'm obsessed with tracking stablecoins. Like, which networks are actually getting the most action? The XRP ledger is about to have around 7 stablecoins running on it. You've got RLUSD, EUROP, XRP USV. The list just keeps growing. But here's what really gets me thinking. All those acquisitions Ripple's been making, they're not random. They're strategically grabbing companies to lock down huge chunks of the stablecoin market flow. Plus, they're going hard after the institutional side too. Ripple is basically becoming the backbone infrastructure that institutions can't ignore. Honestly, they're like the Swift of crypto. That's the best way I can put it. Now, the million-dollar question. Is Ripple trying to kill Swift? I actually don't think that's their main game plan. Look, their real mission is revolutionizing how money moves globally, making it lightning fast and super efficient. If that happens to steamroll Swift in the process, well, that's just business. But I'm betting Swift won't just roll over and die. They're going to have to jump into the space whether they like it or not. And honestly, I think they're already starting to make those moves. All these Swift posts about digital assets and tokenization, that screams to me that they're genuinely excited to dive into this world. I mean, they're already running trials with Chainlink and the DTCC to move tokenized assets around. So connecting with major players just makes total sense. And here's where it gets really interesting. David Schwartz has mentioned this dream scenario multiple times. Picture this: Swift actually using Ripple's tech, maybe paying a small licensing fee to tap into their system. Boom, suddenly Swift gets ultra-efficient clearing and settlement while keeping their messaging game strong. It's like the perfect marriage, you know? This combo could completely flip the script on global payments and totally transform the financial system. Plus, Swift stays relevant and powerful in the digital world. It's honestly a win-win situation. Will it actually happen? Your guess is as good as mine. But I've got this gut feeling the master plan here is way bigger than any of us realize. Anyway, that's a wrap. If you dug this breakdown, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications for more free content. Thanks for hanging out with me. Catch you in the next one.